I think I can actually do my preamble while we're filling out the cards. So mentioning D-Day this morning, I don't know how many saw the remembrance ceremony on television. Fewer, needless to say, folks who actually participated around for that, but still always seems like an important day to remember and to respect that sacrifice. So, as I said, I'm here from Therapy Garden / Senior U, and I think there might be some folks here who don't know who we are. I think many of you do. We were started by a former high school principal named Dave Wheeler, and his original intent was to bring therapeutic benefits of gardening to seniors in Massachusetts. So at the outset, we were bringing dirt and elevated garden beds around to different senior centers and trying to encourage people to do hands-on gardening. What we found out was that a lot of folks either did that at home already, or there were some programs that existed, but the popularity of what we were trying to do paled in comparison to when we did a workshop about gardening. So we would do things like preserve your garden, harvest, make your own herb garden, and those workshops were a lot more popular than the hands-on stuff. So they gradually became all that we did. We did just workshops. And since they were first only about gardening, we kept the Therapy Gardens name. Now the subject matter for those is really diverse, including stuff like what we're doing today. But we also have popular workshops on things like artificial intelligence, all sorts of different things. And because of that, we created a Senior U moniker as well. So we've got two websites also. Excuse me. One is therapygardens.com. The other one's senioru.com. If you go to the website, you can request a copy of any of our presentations, including this one, if it interests you. And if you sign up for our newsletter, we love you to do that. We want you to rest assured that unlike so many other organizations, we don't do anything with your email. We protect your email address. So if you sign up for a newsletter, you're not going to start getting strange texts in the next few minutes after that. Does anybody have any questions about Therapy Gardens and Senior U before we begin? Okay. So last time I did food trivia, and the food trivia was a lot of fun. The food trivia, I sort of think, is more about showing off. Everybody can show off what they know. This is a little bit more about learning something and also appreciating these quotes from different people from Massachusetts. It's a little bit more thought-provoking in a lot of ways. So as I go through these quotes, I'm going to stop and we can look at them as well and consider them. But I will at the same time try and prompt you to see if you can figure out who said them. So let's go ahead and start. First quote, old age is no place for sissies. Old age is no place for sissies. This is a woman from, one guess was somebody's mother. She might have said that, but that's not my answer. This woman was born in Lowell who said this. And here's a second quote from her. I'd like to kiss you, but I just wash my hair. She was a movie star. She was a movie star, and they made a song about her eyes, a popular song in the 80s. Bette Davis, very good. Bette Davis, indeed. So, next up. They who can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. That's a good quote. When you're finished changing, you're finished. When you're finished changing, you're finished. This is a gentleman who you normally associate, most Americans do, with another city, not Boston, but he was in fact from Boston. There we go, Benjamin Franklin. And here's the quote. I waited. You probably would have all gotten it based on that one. A penny saved is a penny earned. There was a recent biopic, I think, on some television thing with Michael Douglas playing Ben Franklin. Did people see that? No? Okay. There we go, Ben Franklin. Got good reviews, okay. Next up, my brother Bob doesn't want to be in government. He promised Dad he'd go straight. And we already heard JFK, indeed. We're tied to the ocean, and when we go back to the sea, whether it's to sail or to watch, we're going back from whence we came. And whenever I do a JFK quote, I'm a little bit dubious, just a little bit, because reading about him, I see how many of the things he said were written by Ted Sorensen. So when I serve these up, I don't know if they're really Ted's or Jack's. Next up. Do the thing we fear, and death of fear is certain. Do the thing we fear, and death of fear is certain. This is probably one of the best minds the state ever produced, arguably, considered so by many. I'm trying to think of who it was. It was Whitman. Whitman called this person his master. Walt Whitman called this person his master. No, it wasn't Thoreau. No. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. This is a gentleman, if I told you the school of thought he was associated with, you would probably get it pretty quickly. He believed in the individual. He believed that we're essentially good and that we're corrupted by the institutions that we create. There we go. Ralph Waldo Emerson. There you go. Very good. It's a business opportunity. Get the FBI to fight our wars against our enemies while they protect us, and we do whatever we want to do. Who's this? I heard it. No, I heard it somewhere else, though. Whitey Bulger. Indeed. That's Whitey. And people remember Whitey, and people remember Whitey's brother? Whitey's brother, who was a little bit more legitimate in many ways than Whitey? Billy, exactly. Okay. Children learn more from what you are than what you teach, which I think is very true. Rule following, legal precedents, and political consistency are not more important than right, justice, and plain common sense. This guy was the first black American to get a PhD. He was born in Western Massachusetts, lived to be 95 years old, and actually ended up, he was in Ghana when he died. He was a big force for Pan-Africanism to try and drive colonialists out of Africa. Anybody know who he is? No. W.E.B. Du Bois was his name. That's Du Bois. Now these are some of these are a little obscure, like this next one. Why should I talk to you? I don't know where you're from. I mean, any of us could have said that, but you don't adjust. You just dominate. You don't adjust. You just dominate. And lastly, once a raider, always a raider. I'll give you a clue. This guy is in here. He's originally from Brockton, which is where Dave Wheeler started this company. There are a few Brockton folks in here. And he was the owner for the Oakland Raiders in the 1970s. Nope, good guess. I heard him. I heard the name. Al Davis. There we go. Very good. So far, I think somebody's gotten all of them. Next up. In the olden days, everybody sang. You were expected to sing as well as talk. It was a mark of the cultured man to sing. Not a lot of that anymore. I'm not interested in having an orchestra sound like itself. I want it to sound Like the composer. No, that's a good, I heard it. Leonard Bernstein. Very good. Very good. Okay. Everybody's business is nobody's business, and nobody's business is my business. That's a house of mirrors, that one. I have an almost complete disregard of precedent and faith in the possibility of something better. It irritates me to be told how things have always been done. I defy the tyranny of precedent. I go for anything that might improve the past. And this woman created probably the preeminent public health organization in the United States, and it's an international organization now as well. Clara Barton, who created the Red Cross. Yeah. Next up. The 20s ended in an era of extravagance, sort of like the one we're in now. There was a big crash, but then the country picked itself up again, and we had some great years. Those were the days when America believed in itself. I was happy and proud to be painting it. There we go, Norman Rockwell. And this is another Rockwell quote. I'll never have enough time to paint all the pictures I like to. And have people been to the Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge? It's wonderful, right? Yeah. Heroes, Vietnam vets are heroes. The guys who tried to rescue our hostages are heroes. I'm just a hockey player. And also, gentlemen, you don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. So this was the guy who, I don't know if you remember 1980, but 1980 at the Olympics in Lake Placid, a team comprised of non-professional, very good. That's Mike Eruzione. He was the Revere-born captain of the United States hockey team that beat the Russians, and the Russians were considered an easy pick for victory. There we go. Health is not a condition of matter, but of mind. Health is not a condition of matter, but of mind. Spirit is the real and eternal. Matter is the unreal and temporal. If Christianity is not scientific and science is not of God, then there is no invariable law, and truth becomes an accident. There we go, Mary Baker Eddy, a pioneer for Christian Science, and you can still go in Boston. I don't know if anybody's gone into that, the glass sphere, the globe, and it's an interesting place regardless of your personal beliefs. I was the kind nobody thought could make it. I had a funny Boston accent. I couldn't pronounce my R's, and I wasn't a beauty. No? That's a good guess. Although Jay thinks he's a beauty. Barbara Walters, very good. Very good. Originally from Brookline. Here's another quote from Barbara. When you're interviewing someone, you're in control. When you're being interviewed, you think you're in control, but you're not. And that's Barbara. Next up. Independence is happiness. Simple, but true. The Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Constitution of several states, and the organic laws of the territories, all alike propose to protect the people in the exercise of their God-given rights. Not one of them pretends to bestow rights. I love that quote. So the person who said this is reminding us that just because we have these freedoms on paper, unless we use them, they don't really mean a lot, right? And this, once you find out who it is, you'll understand why this is important to her. It's a she, and part of her legacy. Lastly, she who succeeds in gaining the mastery of the bicycle will gain the mastery of life. This is a woman, and she was very interested in equality for other women and really ticked off that women couldn't vote in what was supposed to be a democracy. Does anybody know what her name was? That was Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony. Next up. This is a rather obscure one, and just a single quote. I'm devoting much of my time to certain food and food equipment developments which seem to merit attention. I'm distressed at the parlous state of the world and at the apparent lack of human capacity to organize mankind for the safe and humane guidance of atomic energy. I should like to stick around this human turmoil a while longer and have a finger in the game. And don't be thrown by atomic energy. This gentleman didn't have anything to do with atomic energy. He had more to do with pineapples. And that was Mr. Dole, yes. James Drummond Dole. He was from Jamaica Plain, he was. Yeah. And has anybody ever been, I traveled to the Hawaiian Islands, and has anybody ever been to Lanai? And have you seen in the middle of the island, it's still completely decimated from the mass production of pineapples. And then they departed once they were able to, once labor was too expensive there to do it in a different part of the world. The New England Journal of Medicine reports that 9 out of 10 doctors agree that 1 out of 10 doctors is an idiot. That makes sense. The reason there are 2 senators for every state is so that one can be the designated driver. This guy's funny. This is Jay Leno from North Andover. Yeah, that's Jay. Okay. I even asked Eleanor Roosevelt difficult questions, and she loved it. You know, you become crazy. I had done a story for 60 Minutes on depression previously, but I had no idea that I was now experiencing it. Finally, I collapsed and just went to bed. Mike Wallace. Very good. I think he did go to Brookline High. Yes. Indeed. I don't care if I'm beautiful. I don't care what I am on the outside. It isn't about the outside. God had to create disco music so I could be born and be successful. Donna Summer, very good. Dorchester. And she was one of the biggest stars in the country for a while there when disco was hot. Okay. One quote for this. What is this you call property? It cannot be the earth, for the land is our mother, nourishing all her children, beasts, birds, fish, and all men. The woods, the streams, everything on it belongs to everybody and is there for the use of all. How can one man say it belongs only to him? This is someone who preceded colonialization, or actually overlapped with the colonialization of the country, a Native American, and one for whom the state is named. Massasoit. Okay. Between 2 groups of people who want to make inconsistent kinds of worlds, I see no remedy but force. This is a little bit different from Massasoit. We're going back and forth here, obviously. Every idea is an incitement. Eloquence may set fire to reason. And lastly, beware how you take away hope from another human being. This is one of, this gentleman is a famous jurist from, I think I heard. This is Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., yes. Those three quotes were his. Okay. Now this next gentleman is near the top of my list, might be my favorite. And we've got three quotes from him. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. Liberty cannot be preserved without general knowledge among the people. And lastly, genius is sorrow's child. No, this is Adams. This is John Adams. You mentioned Jefferson. Have people gone to see the place where John Adams lived in Quincy? It's very cool, and they have it set up. They did at least the last time I went, which was probably 30 years ago, but they had it set up for, and do people remember the story of when he died? He actually died to the day, on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So he died on July 4th, 1826. And as he died, he was looking out the window and said, Jefferson still lives, because he was so close to Jefferson. But what he didn't know was that Jefferson had died the same day, and that the message was on its way to him that had happened. Monticello, too. Okay, there we go. Very good. When I die and they lay me to rest, gonna go to the place that's the best. When I lay me down to die, going up to the spirit in the sky. What's his name? Not Bob Newhart. There you go, Norman Greenbaum. Norman Greenbaum wrote that song. Gentleman from Massachusetts. Next up, I was on my face. I heard the count from 1 to 10. I kept telling myself that I had to get up, but I couldn't move. I couldn't make myself move. It was the strangest thing. We heard it, Rocky Marciano, also from Brockton. In the ring, I never really knew fear. And what really marked Marciano was that, unlike any other boxer you can really think of, especially heavyweight champion, he never lost. He didn't lose once. Yeah. No, when he was on his face, he still got up and he won the fight. Yeah. Although that sort of sounds like losing in a way, right? Look for goodness, not evil. Look for cheer, not trouble. A statue has to speak for itself, and it seems useless to explain to everyone what it means. I have no doubt that people will read into my statue of Lincoln a great deal I did not consciously think, whether it be for good or ill, who can say? Does anybody know this gentleman's name? You can still go to his homestead out in Lee. It's beautiful, and there's sculpture all around placed in these rolling hills. It's very cool. He did the Lincoln Memorial. His name is Daniel Chester French. My folks came to the U.S. as immigrants, aliens, and became citizens. I was born in Boston, a citizen, went to Hollywood and became an alien. There we go. Leonard Nimoy, I am not Spock. Another quote from Leonard. Very good. This next person, one of the state's best writers, I think. The first quote, my friends are my estate. I love that. My friends are my estate. I'll give you three here. Second one, if I read a book and it makes my whole body so cold, no fire can ever warm me, I know that's poetry. And lastly, tell the truth, but tell it slant. This is a woman who spent much of her life, she would probably be considered now, despite her other talents, an agoraphobic. She hardly ever left the house. Very good. Emily Dickinson. There we go. Very good. Baseball is like church. Many attend, few understand. Show me a good loser, and I'll show you an idiot. And the last one, nice guys finish last. This is, no, not Babe Ruth. Good guess. This guy was associated with baseball. He was a manager. His nickname was the Lip. Leo DeRocher. Somebody shouted it out. There you go. Very good. Next one. You can't separate peace from freedom because no one can be at peace unless he has his freedom. And the next one. If you turn the other cheek, you can be enslaved for 1,000 years. This is a controversial gentleman who was originally from Boston. He converted, became a follower of Islam, Black American Malcolm X. There we go. There we go. Next up. It's a human phenomenon that there has to be a reason for everything. There almost never is. If you want to continue to be good and perform at a high level and be deep in all areas, you still have to hit on some undervalued players too. You can't just go out and sign marquee free agents or trade for players when they're at their peak of their value. That's not a formula for long-term success. So this is the gentleman who was arguably the architect of the World Series win by the Red Sox in 2004 and the breaking of the curse. He was a young general manager for the Red Sox at the time. Theo Epstein. Very good. Now this next gentleman was called by Melville America's Shakespeare. He's arguably, again, one of, if not our best writer. And some of these quotes might remind you of that. Words, so innocent and powerless as they are, as standing in a dictionary, how potent they become in the hands of one who knows how to combine them. Selfishness is one of the qualities apt to inspire love. I thought that was really interesting. That made me stop and think for a moment. Every individual has a place to fill in the world and is important in some respect, whether he chooses to be so or not. And lastly, we must not always talk in the marketplace of what happens to us in the forest. This is also a 19th century famous writer. He's from Salem. No, good guess. Hawthorne. This is Hawthorne. So I mentioned Emerson, who believed in our essential goodness as human beings. He didn't believe in original sin at all. Hawthorne very much believed in original sin and was descended from one of the judges who prosecuted the Salem witch trials, for example. He also, what I read recently too, was that he tried to go to Brook Farm. Have folks heard about Brook Farm? It was a communal farming experiment up the road in JP. And he went there, but he thought it was really too noisy, and he came to the conclusion that manual labor is bad for creativity. Hawthorne? I don't know. He might have been. Good question. I don't know. Next up. That's the motivation of an artist, to seek attention of some kind. I don't read music. I don't write or read music. And lastly, if you're an addict, it controls your life, and your life becomes uncontrollable. It's boring and painful, filling your system with something that makes you stare at your shoes for 6 hours. It could have been Steven Tyler. It was James Taylor. Yes, very good. Very good. That's James Taylor. Next up. There, His Majesty can now read my name without glasses, and he can double the reward on my head. And also, I urge you by all this is dear, by all this is honorable, by all that is sacred, not only that you pray, but also that you act. John Hancock, not shy about writing his name twice as large as everybody else's. Okay. If you don't believe in freedom of expression for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. And lastly, rational discussion is useful only when there's a significant base of shared assumptions. So if you're wondering, like, what the heck is this? Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. This is because this gentleman gave birth to a way of considering language and turned it into a science, and was a professor at MIT for a long time. He's also known for his radical politics. His name's Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky. I remember trying to be funny, and both my parents were terribly funny. My father was also very dignified, but my mother was an absolute ding-a-ling, a ripper. I'd rather make the cut in the Crosby than win another Oscar. And lastly, nobody deserves this much money, certainly not an actor. This guy was from Newton, and really hard not to like, and a movie star for a long time. I think he's been gone for maybe 15 years or so. No, Carell's still alive. I'll give you a clue. He was one of the grumpy old men in Grumpy Old Men. No, Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon, very good. That's Jack. I don't stop eating when I'm full. The meal isn't over when I'm full. It's over when I hate myself. Everything's amazing right now, and nobody's happy. This guy's a stand-up comedian, somewhat controversial. At one point, no, not Lenny. At one point, he was canceled, and I think he's the redheaded guy. No, this guy also has red hair. Louis C.K. is his name. Louis C.K. I had no occasion for an apron on that morning. I had no occasion for an apron on that morning. No, not Julia Child. My door was open part of the time, and part of the time I tried to get a nap, and their voices annoyed me, and I closed it. I kept it open in summer, more or less, and closed in winter. The emphasis is on annoyed me. Yes. Right. Lizzie Borden. That was Lizzie. Yep. Okay. When you do well, everybody's after you, and sometimes the motives are legitimate, and sometimes it's envy and jealousy. I try to hire good people and let them do their job and don't question how they do things. So this guy's a businessman and the owner of the sports team that up until a few years ago was captivating the state. I'm sure we'll return again. This is Bob Kraft who said those things. Yep. Okay. Nothing to me feels as good as laughing incredibly hard. And I love my wife dearly, and therefore I've never cooked a meal, romantic or otherwise, for her. He's from Metro West. He was in The Office. This is Steve Carell. Yep. Very good. Change before you have to. This guy was considered probably the face of corporate America during the last 10 years of the 20th century. He was a CEO. I was afraid of the internet, no, not Steve Jobs, because I couldn't type. Giving people self-confidence is by far the most important thing that I can do, because then they will act. He was a little bit controversial because he was really into making this huge corporation for which he was responsible smaller. He fired a lot of people. No. And he's from Peabody originally. This is Jack Welch. I don't know if folks remember Jack or not. General Electric. Yeah. Mom ran the house, so we grew up Portuguese. There you go. This is Emerald. I grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts. My background was modest, and I worked at a Portuguese bakery in town. This is Emerald. Emerald Lagasse. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. Disobedience is the key here. A man is rich in proportion to the number of things he can afford to let alone. This guy was famous for going into seclusion by a pond. Walden was the name of the pond. What was his name? His name was Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau. Very good. Let's see here. These are some of my favorite quotes, too. I wish most sincerely there was not a slave in this province. It always appeared a most iniquitous scheme to me, to fight ourselves for what we're daily robbing and plundering from those who have as good a right to freedom as we have. I am more and more convinced that man is a dangerous creature, and that power, whether invested in many or a few, is ever grasping, and like the grave, cries, give, give. And lastly, whoops, that was Abigail Adams. That was Abigail Adams. I'm sort of partial to her because my daughter played her in a school play and educated me about a lot of the things that she said. She was an independent thinker of note in her own right, and it's worth reading some of the things she's written. It takes a great man to be a good listener. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, "Press on," has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. This was, my beloved grandmother would talk about this president once in a while, who was president during some of the time when she was growing up. And he's from Massachusetts. Calvin Coolidge. That is indeed Calvin Coolidge. This next one is pretty obscure and it's modern. I would not have gotten these if someone showed them to me, but when you live in a leading lady's body, which I do, you have to constantly prove that you're funny. And I grew up in a small, very small town, which happened to be in western Massachusetts, where there were a lot of gay people. I remember my aunt going to a gay wedding when I was 11, and I thought it was the coolest thing. This is a woman who directed some popular movies. She's a comedic actress. Her name's Elizabeth Banks. Let's see here. Okay. I trained in Provincetown, Mass. Back then, they didn't have all the tourists on Cape Cod. Very isolated, very good spot. I called it the jail. All you could do was train, run, walk, talk boxing. I like acting, and very much because I don't get punched, and it's not real. So as you can tell, this gentleman, this is another boxer we're throwing at you, and his head, at least hair-wise, looked like mine. Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler, very good. Okay, we've got 6 more here. It's all about hustling, whether it's in Boston or the film industry. I've been hustling my entire life, acting my way into trouble and acting my way out again. I'm just fortunate to have had the opportunity to apply it in a different direction. Very good. Not Donnie, but his brother, Mark Wahlberg. And this is another Mark quote: "If I succeed in business but fail as a father, then I failed." Done well for himself. Every individual has a unique purpose, and it's our duty to support and encourage one another in fulfilling it. The city upon a hill is something that's been co-opted by just about by tons of politicians in the nearly 400 years since this gentleman coined the phrase, at least first coined it here. The Bay Colony, he was the first leader of that colony, and there's still a town named after him near Revere. I heard it. Very good. John Winthrop, exactly. Very good. That was John Winthrop. At 74, I'm getting minor raves about my looks. But I'm caught in the middle. Who knows what 74 looks like? Who cares? But if I'd listened to my friends, I could now lie and say I'm 84. For 84, the way I look is spectacular. This woman was a riot. A lot of energy, originally from Wollaston, and became big in the movies in her day. A lot of people enjoy being dead, but they're not dead, really. They're just backing away from life. Not Bette Davis. This woman was small, fiery redhead. And her first name was Ruth. Anybody know? Ruth Gordon. Ruth Gordon. I love those quotes. Next up, 4 left here. If you risk nothing, then you risk everything. Kids need to see entertainment where females are valued as much as males. This woman is from down near the Cape. I guess by all accounts she's really smart and she's really a good archer besides being a movie star. Gina Davis. There we go. Exactly. The New England conscience does not stop you from doing what you shouldn't. It just stops you from enjoying it. There are 3 terrible ages of childhood: 1 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 30. So this gentleman was a social commentator and big on the radio and somewhat TV in his day. His name was Cleveland Amory. Cleveland Amory. 2 left. A healthy male adult boar consumes each year 1.5 times his own weight in other people's patience. The theme of old age doesn't seem to fascinate Hollywood. And lastly, what interests me is why men think of women as witches. It's because they're so fascinating and exasperating, so other. So this gentleman was an author, and he wrote, there was a popular movie that he made that was set and filmed here in Massachusetts on the South Shore that was about witches, was set in modern day at the time. This is about 30 years ago. It was filmed in Cohasset and Scituate. The movie was. He also wrote a series of books where the lead character was named Rabbit. Rabbit was John Updike. There we go. That's John Updike. And lastly, Wake Up the Damn Bambino and have me face him. Maybe I'll drill him in the... What happened with Boston? Do the people eat and drink baseball? It's unbelievable. I don't really have the words to describe how good it feels to be a part of it. This guy was a pitcher who was part of that team that won the World Series, breaking the curse in 2004. No, not the bloody sock guy. He was also known as Little Petey, was his nickname. Pedro Martinez. Pedro Martinez. And he's on the Red Sox, so we're putting it in here. Schilling's not from Boston either. So that's it. Any questions, suggestions? No? Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Good to see you.